Lee. I'm Nate Pearson, and I'm not a coach, but with me today is head coach Chad Timmerman.
Hello. Stole your line.
And Pete Morris.
Howdy, guys.
Hello. So Jonathan right now, he's at Nationals, mountain bike Nationals in, Colorado?
Yeah, in Winter Park.
Yep, really up high. He is trying to win. Well, actually, he's got like a 2-year kind of trajectory to win. This is more of a recon for experience because next year is at the same place. I don't know if it's the same course or not. But to set expectations for everyone, we just talked about it before he left. He's probably around 305 right now for FTP at 142. And to win, he thinks he needs to be at 340 or 350. Mm-hmm. So imagine racing yourself at 30 watts less. Like, it's hard to win.
It's hard to win.
Yeah. People could get flats, though, so.
Yep.
Something always happens. I think in mountain biking, it's less likely for it to win, but...
It's going to take a bit of luck to get him a top 5, to get him on the podium by his own admission.
Yeah, by his own admission. But this is like a building step to the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he'll know a lot better next year what he's in for.
Yeah. So if this is your first time listening to this podcast, I would just skip this episode because this is the second time I've hosted, I guess, but I'm not very good at it. So listen to the next one or the one before and then come back to this one and you'll see the difference. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is the something that happened this week, pricing update. We updated our prices on Monday. And then in the forum, there was some discussion about it. And there's one line of thing that people talked about that kind of got to us. And what we've done in the past is before we did a pricing update, we gave a week of people to be able to lock into the old prices. This time we didn't do that. And I thought we discussed it as a team too. Companies change prices all the time and it's not a big deal. Well, Chad McNeese actually wrote this in the forum. And the reason why people are upset was because we had set a precedent before of always announcing that. And the part that hurt the most is that people said they weren't like mad at us, but they were disappointed. It was like
they expected more.
They expected more. It's just like my parents, man.
Yes.
So we actually Jonathan and I talked about it. We both lost sleep over it. I felt sick to my stomach with it. Everyone, just so you guys know, if you're in the forum, like we're reading those threads. I think everyone in the company read that thread. So, and all 60 of us or whatever, we are all talking about it. And so we came up with a new solution is we're going to open it back up for 1 week where if you sign up in the next week, you can get locked in at the old pricing. So if you do that for 1 week until I think it's next Friday, that's when we're going to go back to the new pricing. And what the new pricing is $19.99 a month or $189 a year. And to put that into context, because it's
perspective.
Yeah, perspective, right? So it's a percentage increase. It's a small dollar increase, but a larger percentage increase. And because we're at scale, we're hoping that for you, people don't feel it a lot, especially those who are listening to this who have already, you might be listening to us a year later. But for us, it is a huge thing for us to be able to hire more engineers. We've got, by the way, TrainerRoad.com/jobs. We have 6 postings up for engineers. We're going to have 4 more. We also have coming up a product manager position. You work with Pete and Brandon on how to build TrainerRoad, which is a pretty cool position. Mm-hmm. And the other one that's coming up that's not posted yet is a copywriting position. And for those who don't know, like if you can compare us to some of our other competitors, our marketing strategy is to teach, like this podcast. With the blog and with YouTube, we're trying to teach, not sell. We don't spend our money on pro team sponsorships, TV commercials. We've done some ads, but they're very, very small compared to
other people,
right? So the money, I'm just trying to say, is the money that you give us, we put in development and teaching. And Chad and I aren't riding off into the sunset, like some people say, although I think we could do a little like hand in hand
Someday.
thing. So to put the price increase in perspective, if you're on the yearly plan, it's 96 cents more a week. And if you're on the monthly plan, it's $1.15 more a week. So if you have like SIS gels, and I love SIS gels, I use them all the time. But if once a week you switch an SIS gel out for a banana, you'll be saving more money than you'll be ahead than the price increase. Mm-hmm. So just to put it in perspective. And I know
we're not trying to gouge anybody.
Yeah, exactly. And I still think that we are the best value in cycling. Nothing makes you faster for less money.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Okay, so if you have anything else to talk about on the forum or in YouTube, please message us. We will interact. Sometimes I'm the one saying some of the stuff, but definitely having discussions with other employees here. So you're really talking to all of us when you talk to us. And thanks to everyone for the feedback too. Like, I feel so lucky that we have such an engaged user base and users. Other companies, they mess up and we just go, well, not using them anymore. And you just go away, right? So I really like interacting with everybody, and I hope you like that we are kind of open and communicative. See, I can't host. You guys know what I'm saying. Let's move on to the questions. Alex, he says, "Hi guys, thanks for all your hard work. I am always looking forward to your podcast." Besides this one, there seems to be mixed information about green tea and endurance out on the internet. Some articles state a 8 to 24% boost in endurance due to fat utilization, and others say that it just inhibits carb absorption and therefore should be avoided at all costs. Just hold on there. 8 to 24% boost.
Anytime you see numbers like that, be suspect.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, I don't think EPO gives you an 8 to 24% boost.
Yeah, probably
Maybe
not.
8, but not 24.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Since I live out of Japan, green tea and matcha tea are very common, though coffee is popular too. I usually drink green tea with my breakfast at the office and also at lunchtime. Can you give some advice on whether or not I should be avoiding green tea, or if some consumption is okay? And if so, how much? Just further information, I am currently training for road racing. Everything is hilly mountainous out here, but for my category, not so long, usually less than 100K. Thanks again, Alex.
Okay, so let's talk green tea real quick before we talk about whether or not he should avoid it or utilize it. So the active component, I guess, in green tea is phytochemicals. And phytochemicals are basically produced by plants. They can be poisonous, they can be medicinal, all depends on which phytochemical we're talking about. And they come in numerous classes. Amongst them are alkaloids, polyphenols. Within polyphenols, you have flavonoids, non-flavonoids. Within flavonoids, I'm not sure how to say it, catechins. So within phytochemicals, we go down a couple classes and we get to catechins, and that's what we're concerned with because that's what we're looking at or what we're talking about when we're discussing green tea. 4 major types of them. They all have long words and acronyms, and the one that we're probably most concerned with, and I see most of the studies mention and is usually touted on the label of green tea extract or green tea itself, is epogallocatechin 3 gallate, and we're just gonna
that
Nice.
one.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
It's EGCG. So EGCG, that's the one. So and the benefit of EGCG in particular, but catechins in general, is numerous and kind of wide ranging in terms of their health benefits. They're antioxidant, which we're us being endurance athletes and undergoing a lot of oxidative stress on a pretty routine level. That's a big win. Anti-inflammatory. Who doesn't want less inflammation? Anti-carcinogenic. Cancer is never a good thing. Antihypertensive, so it can bring your blood pressure down. Antimicrobial, so it can help in combating infection. And then for what it's worth, I just wanted to touch on really quickly how we're always talking about antioxidants and how they blunt the adaptive effect of workouts, and you don't want antioxidants after your workouts. And then we get the question, well, what about antioxidant foods? And it doesn't really carry between supplements and foods. So supplements post-workout, if you're in a building phase where you actually want the adaptation, try to avoid supplementation because they're effectively megadoses of antioxidants, whereas within food, it's really hard to OD on antioxidants to the point where you blunt that adaptive response.
That's good to know.
So food afterwards,
Yeah,
go crazy.
it's like the basic is like if you're eating whole foods, you can never get too much.
pretty much can't because the quantities you have to eat them in are ridiculous.
Yeah, kilograms or pounds of things.
Yeah, I take EGCG as a supplement, and to time it, I don't know how close I can time it. What I do though is I work out at like 3 to 4 p.m. And then I take it at 8 a.m. I don't know if there's any research that shows like if you take it like opposite 12 hours away, if you're going to blunt it less. But for me, anti-carcinogenic, like cancer is one of my big scares. Right? You do all this and then you're gone at 40 or something.
Sure.
That's not fun.
And I didn't dig into the timing of intake though, so can't help you much on that front. But maybe we can look into that a little later.
And if anyone knows about that, I've looked for this before. So if anyone listening knows, please
know.
send us a message either in the forum, email us, or put on YouTube. But that would be, I think, That's another interesting study to see if you can, like when, because I think everyone thinks they should be taking antioxidants, but can I not blunt
and
my...
with micronutrients and the like, the timing is a pretty big deal.
You could almost have like a time schedule for the day and when you should take each thing, and like depending on how many supplements you have.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You take a lot all at the same time, right?
Yeah, but they're all geared to be like 12 hours away.
Yeah.
Time released.
Yeah, well, not time release, but I just want them
Far
far
away.
away
Yeah,
from
far away.
on the opposite side of my workout day. I guess that would be 3 a.m, but I'm not going to wake up at 3 a.m. to take a bunch.
Not till next year when you're really going for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so other benefits of catechins are that they're neuro and DNA protective. Just lost my spot. Oh, and can have an effect on cholesterol, lower cholesterol, LDL in particular, the low density, more harmful form. There's also thermogenic and metabolizing increasing properties, and I think that's why most people try to incorporate green tea into their diet or endurance-based diets. So basically, everything we just discussed is disease-preventing attributes. So all desirable, and for those reasons alone, I don't see a reason to avoid it. I mean, even if it did show that it blunts the effect of carbohydrate, it would have to be to a pretty high degree for me to fly in the face of all those benefits just to save a little bit of endurance.
Yeah, and
For
the metabolism increasing properties, there's studies, you can Google them, but significant body fat reduction when supplementing EGCG. So that could also like kind of counteract or balance it out if you think that there's going to blunt some of your adaptions or something like that.
Yes. So within green tea, there's a couple things that actually work together. So caffeine, we know caffeine's a component of it, and we know we've discussed ad nauseum the benefits of caffeine, especially for endurance athletes, even if solely to reduce RPE, but there are others as well. And then something called L-theanine, which has psychoactive properties. So basically acts on the brain, which again probably is going to be RPE related. But in any case, these two things in concert work really well together. Caffeine, we know, mobilizes free fatty acids. It aids in glycogen resynthesis. It affects our alertness, our cognition. And then the two together have synergistic effects, which affect or can alter or give you a more stable mood. So mood stabilization is the term. Improve your focus, and that might be as much tied to caffeine, but the synergistic effect actually enhances that. And
That's like the smoothness of green tea versus like a shot of espresso, right?
yeah, I think so. I think that's...
Yeah. And so I've been calling it L-theanine, but L-theanine, that's probably, I think you're much better pronouncing these things than I am.
Some of them I actually, Emma says, have you ever been to that website?
I don't know.
It's a pretty good resource.
Thank you. L-theanine. So this is a supplement that you can buy, and it's really cheap. I take it in 200 milligram, like one pill is 200 milligrams, but I take... maybe it's 4. I take whatever, double, like 2 pills of it, and I take it every morning with the caffeine too. It can have people on the internet, they report like lower anxiety, but it's just a smoother caffeine release. Yeah. And now too, recently I've seen some kind of like no-dose products where it's caffeine where they put L-theanine in it too at the same time to kind of smooth it out.
Yep.
It's also in some sleep products, like before bed, because it has like a calming attribute. And I don't know if this is all total BS, but it's been reported in many times, and it's a amino acid. It's generally thought of as pretty safe. So interesting stuff.
Interesting indeed. Okay, so when it comes to the performance benefit, not a whole lot of literature to support it unless you're a mouse. And I know that they can extrapolate animal findings to human expectations, and they do it all the time. So maybe there's something there, but in the case of mice, there was a slight endurance capacity increase.
Is that with caffeine or just green tea without caffeine?
I'm pretty sure it might have been EGCG specifically.
Okay. It's a great time to be a mouse. They've cured cancer and like all sorts of things.
Yep. There was a study that showed there might be a positive benefit on muscle wasting. There was a study that showed there might be improvement in immune function. But all of these all these studies are often enough countered with something that shows that there weren't the same effects, or maybe effects to the contrary. And then there was one study that showed it might improve VO2 max because the extraction of oxygen from the blood to the muscle is slightly improved. So there are things that say, might be worthwhile from an endurance perspective, endurance performance improvement perspective. And then as far as the studies on how it interacts with carbohydrate and maybe tones down the effect of carbohydrate, that was a tough one. There was one in 2010 that suggested polyphenols inhibit carbohydrate digestion, but then there's another one in 2015 which I think was a meta study that showed that reduced blood glucose levels due to improved insulin sensitivity, which kind of counters that. So the evidence seems to support that there is improved blood sugar homeostasis, and that alone, again, to me speaks in favor of utilizing.
Sounds like a risk I'd be willing to take for the benefits here.
Yeah, it sounds like it's either like neutral to good for performance, but good for health.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is the takeaway, and then so really this boils down to antioxidants and getting high quality antioxidants, and of course timing it right. But basically, our recommendation is, and will probably always be, get it through whole foods when possible. So fruits and vegetables, largely, coffee and tea. Absolutely factor into that. And then supplements, and my take is supplements are really only appropriate when there's a recognized deficiency. I don't take supplements just for the take of taking supplements, or just for the sake of taking supplements. I know other people disagree, and that's totally okay. That's totally fine. That's just my view on the matter.
I know I have expensive pee, but in my mind,
It's amazing.
the fruits and vegetables and coffee and green tea and supplements.
You're covering a lot of bases.
I want to cover. I want to live forever.
More
I want to live a long time.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and you do eat pretty healthy, very healthy.
I do eat.
Yeah.
Probably here at the office.
Your diet and your habits have just
keep improving.
Keep improving
steadily,
Yeah.
and they're all maintainable or sustainable, which is the key.
Okay, you guys ready for the next one?
Yeah, let's do it.
Indeed.
Okay, Sam asks how to carry momentum through corners. So he was at his local crit, and what happens, I'm just going to read it. It's a long one. I was going to try to paraphrase it, but I can't do it. Jonathan's so good. Jonathan, come back.
Yeah.
My local crit course has a lot of slight downhills and flowy corners. We race both men and women and junior adults together, and as a result, I am one of the heavier riders in the race. I find myself often running up on the wheel in front of me during a corner, whether it's a junior or a woman, and I have to slightly brake as I go through a corner. I feel like it's not proper, as I'm causing the people behind me to brake, etc. But I have no real choice as I go through these corners faster than the gal in front of if I'm behind someone considerably lighter than me. I leave some space between my wheel and the wheel in front before these corners, but I usually gobble up that space pretty quickly and still end up on the brakes. Any suggestions for avoiding braking through corners? I can't break my line, as we're sometimes 2 to 3 across, though these corners and I have no lateral movement available to me.
First, I think it's really important to point out that it's really hard to be smooth and to brake appropriately when you have such a mixed field. I mean, women riders, junior riders, and then I don't even know what categories these are, but mash those all into, or put those all into the same field at the same time, and that's going to create a whole lot of issues you're not going to have to deal with if you're just in a Cat 3 race or a Cat 1-2 race.
I would say, Samuel, I feel your pain. I am a bigger, heavier rider, and I hate inconveniencing people. So between those two things, the trick for me has been just move to the front. Like, do whatever I can to be at the front of the race or close enough to the front of the race that I don't have to brake. And that's served me really well over many years of figuring out that I have to put in more effort at the top of climbs and things like that, because every time I can get to the front, my life is way easier, and the balance out of the extra effort for the not braking is awesome.
And I feel like too, like it's going to be exaggerated with juniors and adults and women, or men and women in there. But if you're at the back of the field, even if it's a just straight up Cat 3 race, there's still going to be one person that touches it or doesn't take the line. And then there's the accordion happens. Yes. And this happens every time to everyone back there. So you just have to, really, besides if you got the gap, I've done it too, where I leave the gap and then they don't slow down. That's even worse, I think, because then you have to accelerate again. Just got to be at the front.
And it's a fine-tuning thing. You'll the more often you do it, the better you get at reading how much braking people are probably going to do and how much speed you can carry in. You'll just end up being more aware of what you need to do. And maybe if you are at the back, if it is a hard hill or something, just give that little bit more. Give 10, 15 feet and start dialing it back until you can't catch, and then you know. Yeah.
So I had a huge problem this at Sea Otter, and it was like a slight downhill into a 180, and then you would go right up a hill, and I would go so much. I'd leave a huge gap. I'd run into the people, and then I'd hit the brakes. I think I would hit them too much, and then have to reaccelerate. And I did that like 4 times, and I dropped out of the race. Pete, what would you do?
Hugely costly.
Yeah, Pete and Chad, what do you do?
No, I raced that same course. It was so hard. It was like, it's this kind of sketchy, narrow, turny descent into more than a 180. It was like a 200-degree turn.
So basically impossible to carry speed through it.
Basically impossible to carry speed, but there was a big runoff. So on the exit, you could go almost as wide as possible. There was that headwind. Did you have the headwind in your race? So it was like the perfect storm. You had to break into the 180, and then as soon as you turned the corner, you got punished for taking it wide because the wind would start catching you away from everybody.
And then it was an uphill,
and it
was
was
like crosswind.
Crosswind uphill, and it was like a 30-second climb at 6%. It was awful. It's easily the worst crit course I've ever ridden.
Other than anticipate your gearing. So at least you get your gearing right.
Yeah.
I kept fighting really, really hard to pass everybody into that.
Yeah, I think that's what the best thing is. Like you said, first wheel.
First wheel. And then I actually, when I was taking it first wheel, I wasn't getting dropped. And the times that I would filter back and even be halfway through the pack, that's when I would have to chase for half a lap because I just couldn't hang no matter what.
Well, then too, that allows you. So not the technical, but the hard part after that allows you to drop back a little bit, save energy.
When I was getting dropped, a couple times I was like Nate, where I'd run into the back of the field right at the 180, and I had to go 100% all out up the climb, and I would still lose 10 seconds.
Like a standing start into a climb.
Oh, man.
Yes,
punishing.
Yeah. But then you don't have the draft of somebody because everyone's already moved. It's hard.
It's hard.
Yeah, we feel your pain, Samuel. I mean, cornering is makes one of the fun parts and the hardest parts of racing.
And yeah, it's just tidying everything up. If you can take the turn a little bit better. I did see that you mentioned it's 2 or 3 across, which to me, that means there's a lot of room. Like I think then you have like a sphere around you where you can maneuver and brake a little less. But with having women and juniors and just probably a breadth of riders, people are going to be more scared of you if you're using up a lot of room. So take that into account.
And if you're going in 2 or 3 wide, then it tells me the speed's a bit low. So you always have the option of trying to bring the speed up so that you string it out.
Another option too is be okay with leave that gap and losing a few wheels in the turns. But if you're racing with juniors and women and you're stronger, sometimes it's easy then to move right back up and not accelerate and not have to brake. You just leave more of a gap and be okay if someone gets in front of you. Like you lose a one wheel, but if you're racing with, I don't know, people that are significantly less fit than you, it could be a good strategy. Okay, you guys ready?
Yeah, this is a long one.
Oh, this is a long question. I got to read all this. Okay. Jason, but Jonathan did this on purpose. He put these questions. He's like, what are the longest questions for Nate? Jason, 5-part. I already messed it up.
Good start.
5-star podcast, gents. I have 2 questions. One about the 3 of you and another about me. First of all, thank you for your countless hours of education and banter. I can't think of a better way to spend an hour with you guys other than a great ride. There's a reason that you are beating Mr. Armstrong in 5-star ratings. That is because we listeners have become to know you as like a family. That's right. We are beating Mr. Armstrong. So give us 5-star review. I just looked. We're like 600 in front of him. So he doesn't ask for ratings though. So, but I don't even think he knows there's a competition, but there is.
We're not above begging.
I know, right? From Dr. Chad's in-depth explanations
to quotes.
Doctor, yes, exactly. Depth explanations to Nate's describing his visit to the doctor to show him his saddle sore. That was bad. I still cringe about that. To Jonathan, keeping everything moving along. I have a suggestion for a future podcast. We have picked up a lot of pieces in each of your backgrounds and how TrainerRoad came to be, but I would love to hear a high-profile cycling personality interview with the 3 of you to tell us your stories and how you collectively got to this point. Yeah, maybe someday we can do the history, how I met Chad Timmerman. It's really, you just beat everybody in races.
Yeah.
That was back when you were really fast.
Yeah, I was pretty good at pimping my wares.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah, actually, I came to your class. That's how it is. Chad was, it was like TrainerRoad at a CompuTrainer studio, pretty much.
Basically.
Some of the exact same workouts.
Yeah. Sweet spot base. I mean, that was 5 years in the making at that very studio.
And then I pitched Chad to go do TrainerRoad at a Starbucks. I said, Chad, we can do this.
I don't think I won the Mount Rose Hill climb, but I did break an hour, so it was a big day.
And you weighed 175 pounds.
178 pounds.
Yeah, you remember that forever, right? That was back when Chad was...
That was a big win for me.
In the 380s for FTP. So that's his glory days.
And not only that, a sub-hour of Mount Rose is crazy fast.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a power meter, unfortunately, but I mean, you do the math. Push a 178-pound rider up that climb and do it under an hour. You have to be generating big watts.
Yeah.
So.
I think my PR is a 135.
Yeah, I did it in 2 hours and 15 minutes the last time I did it, for example.
Okay, so that's probably all the history we need right now. Question about me. I am an old, fat... Oh, no, actually, I'll say how I met Jonathan, too. Sorry.
Yeah, do it.
I love to do these little tangents.
Jonathan's not here to rein you in.
Jonathan, no, so I met Jonathan. The first time I remember meeting him, I think I saw him at some races, it was at a 1 million cup presentation, which is like,
I was there.
like you kind of pitch your startups kind of thing. And he had his own startup. It was a great idea. And I think some other companies doing it. It was called Hot Lap. And it was for motocross. And it was trying to figure out what kind of speed and time you could save by riding a motocourse. Like you're actually supposed to not jump. And he could describe this way better than me. But just to have like your phone on you, and then maybe in the future have sensors on how quickly you could go, so you could have accurate timing, and also to figure out how am I riding this course and how to get faster. It's kind of like similar, like the same kind of
There's
ethos.
some overlap, yeah.
Yeah. The problem Jonathan says, and he will tell you that he wasn't a good engineer. So he tried, and he actually built a lot of stuff, and I saw it, but he didn't have the he didn't go to school for engineering or was an engineer for many years before doing it. So it's very, very difficult, and that's how I met him. Yeah, crazy. Okay, and then I met. No one cares about this. Just fast forward. I met Pete. Pete and I actually almost lived together.
Yeah.
He was really good friends with one of our roommates, and you moved in after I moved out of the same house, but you were always there.
Yep.
And he makes really good cheesecake. Remember that competition with the roommates cheesecake?
Yeah, that was a good one.
He's actually a really good, a really good cook.
Yeah, it's Cliff
in general.
Bart team camp. He cooks for like, how many, 15, 20 people?
15, 20 people.
Yeah.
He's
Also-
a designated cook in Kona.
Yeah, Nate also took me to my first bike race, period.
It was our first bike race.
Yeah.
Yep. And we were 1 and 2. I don't know who won.
Second to last and last.
Oh, yeah, 1 and 2 the last. Yeah. Yeah, kind of. I was thinking it from the back. Like,
Reframed it a bit.
We did sprint against each other, I'm pretty sure. But we were like 20. I remember them like cleaning up the finish line like as we were crossing.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Sprinting
yeah, we were
each
the
other.
very, very last people. It was Boca. We got dropped on the first,
Humble
like
beginnings.
before the first climb. It was like the first mini climb. And we just rode together.
Yeah.
That's a good story.
It was hard.
It was really hard.
Look at this now.
Nate's
Pete.
like, come on, come do this bicycle race with me. I'm like, it sounds great. Let's do it.
And look what we did. So that's a little bit of history on us. Question about me, going back to Jason's question. I am an old, fat, slow rider. Aw. But I love every moment of the bike. Anyway, that's great. I try to do my TrainerRoad workouts on the trainer while my daughter is napping, but inevitably she will wake up during my training ride. I usually try to wait for the rest periods between sets to get her out of her crib. When I get back on my bike to continue to ride, I notice it seems very laborious to get back into the swing of things. This happens with as little as 2 to 5 minutes off the bike resting. Am I missing any benefit of the workouts by taking this extra rest between sets, ultimately making me fresher for subsequent sets? What is going on physically that causes discomfort in the legs getting back on the bike after an off the bike rest? Is there anything I can do to alleviate this? Great. Keep up the great work. Thanks again for the podcast and TrainerRoad product. Love you both. Love them both. Love you both. See, I mean, it's just bad. Jason, this totally happens with kids. If a kid and both of you guys don't have kids, but you put someone in the crib, the trainer is such a great way to train, but then they wake up and you have to get off. And sometimes it's the middle of the roll, sometimes it's the rest period. What's up, Chad?
Yeah, I mean, disruptions are never easy. So the only thing I can equate this to, or the closest thing that I can equate this to, is when I'm out on a group ride and somebody gets a flat, and then we have to stop for, you hope 5 minutes, but typically they're the worst among the bunch at changing a tire, and it's 10 minutes later and you're still standing
Do you have
there.
a tube, Chad?
Yeah, that too. So there are a couple things that spring to mind. First off, let's just look at the physiologic components. Depending on how long you're standing there, your breathing and therefore your oxygen uptake, your heart rate and all that fall. So getting that revved up again can be a little challenging. Core temperature, excuse me. If you happen to be riding on a hot day, maybe it wells up a bit further. I don't think either of these are what you're describing. I'm just kind of throwing things at the wall here. So all of this leads me to think that most likely we're just seeing, you're just experiencing your muscles cooling off. I mean, I can't really there's lactate in the bloodstream, but that starts to clear, and that's not necessarily, it doesn't cause the heaviness. I mean, I've experienced it, and I've thought about this a number of times too, and the only thing I can pin it down to is that our muscles cool off a bit. And there is something called the Q10, or the Q10 temperature quotient, which is basically it's a rate of change with either biological or chemical systems as a consequence of a 10 degrees Celsius change in temperature. So, and this is one of the reasons why proponents of warm-ups are so staunchly in favor of it, because they talk about raising muscle temperature, and the muscle simply functions better at higher temperatures. So there might be something tied to that. I mean, if your muscles are fully warmed up and firing on all cylinders, and then you stand there for a few minutes and they cool even a few degrees, that can have an impact on effort, and you're trying to get right back up to either, following a flat tire, the speed that you stopped at, getting back into a workout. If you were mid-interval and you try to dive right back into that interval and you're doing it with cooler muscles, it's going to put some additional strain on the system.
Feels awful, really.
It feels terrible every time. Yeah, but physiologically, I can't think of anything beyond that would really explain that. So that's my best guess.
So what do you do?
Ease back into it when possible. He did ask, and I forgot to address this, so I'll do it now, if he's missing any benefit of the workout by taking this rest. It really depends on the type of workout you're doing. If it's a low rest workout, like those reduced amplitude jobbers where you're at 88%, you jump up to 120 and go back to 88, absolutely. That you're getting recovery that is not intended, and then it's kind of a race-specific workout, and it's supposed to maintain a high level of oxygen uptake, and you're going to disrupt that. So workouts like that, and a VO2 max interval, for instance, if it's a 3-minute interval and you're taking a 1-minute or a 5-minute break in the midst of it, obviously you're going to have to redo that interval, because it's definitely going to impact the quality of that workout. But in most cases, a really sweet spot and everything below it, no big deal. It's really not. You're going to get the work in, maybe even restart the interval if possible, so that it's not disrupted if you're trying to grow, if you're in the process of growing your sweet spot durations. You were at 5s, now you're at 8s, now you're at 10s. But all told, it's not going to have a big impact on your training with most of those sub-threshold workouts.
I would think even threshold, if you're doing, let's say you did 2x20 and you had a 7-minute break instead of a 5-minute break, it's not going to have a huge impact.
No big deal, especially if, No, a lot of the physiologic benefit is there. Enduring 20 minutes versus a 2x10 is so much more psychologically geared or targeted that I'm not, as a coach, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
And as a rider, your performance isn't going to suffer because of it.
So don't worry about it, and then
try to ease back into it. I mean, if at all possible, and to go back to the whole flat tire thing, for whatever reason, everyone feels like they just need to tear ass to get right back up to speed.
Always.
And I don't know what that's about. Can we just relax and realize we've been standing around for 10 minutes and just kind of work back into it so that we can enjoy the rest of this ride? And then with your workout, again, depending on where you ducked out, be sensible about where you restart. Try to restart in a recovery valley, maybe.
Yeah. Rewind a little bit,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wind it back up gently and gradually.
Yeah. What I always think about is getting a flat tire in a race, and then you go to the pits. And then you have to restart as hard as possible, because they never put you in where you want to go. So you have to do probably the hardest effort you've done in the last, 10 or 15 minutes or whatever, to just get back into the back of the race.
And they start you as they're coming by. They don't give you a head start.
It depends. Sometimes they're
Sometimes they're good,
sometimes not so much.
Yeah, it's like a roll of the dice. But yeah, that's easily the worst I ever feel on a bike is after a flat tire.
And then from the psychological side of it, it's a distraction. It's something that removes you from the focus you had. So that can be tough too. So again, and that's probably intensity dependent. It's going to be a lot easier to get yourself back into a sweet spot or a tempo repeat than it is a VO2 max repeat.
When you acclimatize your mental
state
your state for a painful interval.
Yep.
Wow.
And then you got to
we
take
really
yourself
need Jonathan
out of the situation. Then you got to put yourself right back into the situation. Just be kind to yourself.
Especially dealing with little babies, it can be stressful because they don't do what you want them to do. So, you give them bottle, and sometimes they start doing that. And you're like, okay, get on. You do 3 pedal strokes, and they spit it out and start crying again. And you do that a couple times in a row, and it gets you totally out of the out of the groove.
Yeah.
And it's way hard to get on.
Yeah,
so
and you probably don't have the option of postponing that workout. But if you do,
well, you could be in the middle of it, right?
Sure.
You could have 1 interval left. You're just like, kid, let me get through this 1 interval. What my kids love to do now is they're 8 and 5, and I say, okay, when I'm working hard and you can hear me breathing, I can't talk to you. And they go, okay. And then they just come up and just talk to me, question after question. I have the headphones on. I'll be like, I'll take my headphones off when I'm not in an interval. And it doesn't happen. And even having discussions with young kids while you're working out in a threshold interval is difficult.
Oh yeah, no, just riding next to Amoret. Sometimes he'll try to talk to me, and my reception is a little cool. It's, yeah.
Okay, ready to move on?
Yeah.
And then I lost our place. Okay. Patrick. Hi, Jonathan. Patrick.
Little does he know.
Yeah. Thanks for the great podcast and app. I got from 274 FTP and 205 pounds to 332 on a ramp test a month ago, and now 170 pounds. That is a huge improvement.
Big watts per kg change.
Yeah, whenever you can get your weight to go down and your FTP to go up, it's a double win. You just feel like a brand new rider.
You are a brand new rider.
Yeah, and people comment on it too. They're like, whoa, that's amazing. Thanks to you guys, I signed up for a crit, and the first 3 laps were very fast, but I was hanging in there pretty comfortable with my TR acquired fitness. I had issues clipping into my pedal at the start, so I naturally took a position in the back of the field of 30. The crit was a 3-corner one, with the sharpest one being from a descent to a low-grade uphill. Upon my 4th time getting into that corner, I was coming in wide on the outside, thought I was carrying more momentum, put my weight on the outside foot, and saw someone crash about 3 bike lengths in front of me. I instantly grabbed a handful of my disc brake, and my wheel slipped out, and I went down. Oh, in your first race.
Yeah.
I really feel stupid because thinking back, the crash in front of me was not that close, and I could have just sit up straight and brake smoothly, get my free lap, and then get back going. But in the midst of the action, I was unconsciously grabbing my brakes. I know I should have been on the inside, as I hear it is generally safer. Regarding the front and back position, the first and second wheel initiated the crash, so I don't think being behind the front would have helped this in this case. About 5 riders had to abandon, and then another 5 to 10 took a free lap. My question is threefold, and I hope that you folks get a lot out of this. 1, am I too nervous to be crit racing? Grabbing my brakes happened so quickly without having an actual decision that I'm thinking I might not be smooth enough for crits. Will experience help me out? I was lucky I did not take anybody down behind me, but I would not want it to happen. So,
Yeah, let's do number 1.
yeah, too nervous to... So there's a crash in front of you, and you grab the brakes. Are you too nervous to be a crit racer, Pete?
No. And it's your first race, right? Like,
Yeah.
think of any time you do anything for the first time, you're not the best at it.
Yeah.
Right? No matter what it is. So it's always just about learning from this experience. And
He asks, will experience help me out? Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
Like, how many crits have you raced, Chad? Like, hundreds.
Hundreds, probably.
Yeah.
And I do remember early on in my crit racing career, one of our local racers, Bubba, he'd been doing it for a long time. And seeing him line up, and I just watched him, and he was so cool, so composed. We roll off the line. He's conversational. I mean, he's done it so many times that he is just as relaxed as if it were a Sunday group ride. And I'm over there already white-knuckling the bars. I'm nervous as can be. All I can see is myself going down. I'm watching wheels. I'm twitchy. I'm probably eager to grab the brakes too. But it didn't last. I mean, later on that season, I was a whole different rider in terms of maintaining a relaxed state.
Bubba's a multi-time national champ.
Yeah,
Like, just shows you, right?
But the difference was he had a ton of experience and I had virtually none. But over time, I'm that guy now. I can be that relaxed at the start of a race.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I one of the things is kind of going in with the mentality of white knuckled, and you're going to crash because it's a dangerous crit. Man, you're just setting yourself up for failure. Yeah. But yeah, one of the things that the decision that he made of grabbing his brakes so quickly, it's what everybody thinks they should do.
It's just a natural reaction.
It's just a natural reaction.
Yeah.
So it's not that you can really fight that, but you can train yourself to. I think it's much better to avoid a crash than to grab brakes and crash into it. Yeah. So always, and a lot of the bigger races, you'll see people steer around crashes rather than run right into the back of it. The people who run right into the crash are usually the ones not paying attention or on their limit. And it sounds like I don't think you were near the front of the race. You were doing all the right things. So now it's just about steering around crashes and kind of knowing a crash is going to happen a quarter a second or a half a second beforehand.
Can be all the difference.
If the crash catches you by surprise, you're going to have a much tougher time getting around it.
Yeah. And typically, you brought this up the other day, that you have like a clean exit usually. It might be a curb, and that's not a great thing, but typically there's grass on the other side of it if it's like a warehouse crit or a neighborhood crit or something. So often enough, it's better to avoid the crash and just take what's in your path. Unless, of course, you watch the Salt Lake City Criterium that we watched the other day. And just the opposite of that. A guy went over a barrier. He must have flown 10 feet before he landed. His bike went the other direction.
Bike went 10 feet higher than he
yeah,
did.
so it's in that case, I don't know, maybe crashed into the back of the field. But
yeah,
it's a pretty selfish move considering you're going to injure more riders.
I feel like you don't get to make that decision.
And
it
that's
just
true.
happens
Usually.
in the middle of the race.
Sure.
Pete, that's a great point. Like all the crashes that happen in front of me, if you can either see them, like you know people are getting locked up, or it's far enough ahead that you do have that half a second to kind of react. I've seen video races where like the field slows down so much and then one person grabs the front brake too much that he just endos over the front. There's no one touches them and there's no crash.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of just what you guys were saying. It's the nervousness, and I used to be a lot more nervous. I'm still nervous for every race when I get to the line, but as we get rolling, I don't feel nervous anymore. It goes away.
Yeah, and I do think when faced with a crash, when you have that half a second to process what's going on, whatever fraction of a second it is, it's enough time to actually make a decision. It's not a conscious one, but I think too many racers abandon hope too quickly. They just assume I'm going down. And they brace for impact. They grab those brakes. They just kind of let the situation unfold under no control of their own. Whereas they have enough time to affect a bit of change. I mean, you can tuck that shoulder. You can turn that wheel. You can maybe not grab the brakes as hard as you want to. But too many riders think there's no way to save this, and they just instantly give up. When a lot of the times it's savable, or at least you can kind of downgrade the severity of it.
I'll knock on wood. I've been near or around tons of crashes in the last handful of years, and I haven't crashed in a long time. Like I haven't actually gone down.
Yeah,
jinxed.
So, yeah, I'm screwed now. But
I'm gonna say it.
No, I was thinking about like the Salt Lake City crash. I had what could have been a horrific crash at a race called Mirko many years ago, and it was my first real big race. There was motos like with cameras on them, and I was freaking out, and I dropped my chain, and then all of the things that happens when you're a fresh racer. But there was a scary descent, and a guy rode off the road on the descent. It was kind of this farm hill, and what ended up happening is their team car stopped on the side of the road, and I came around a blind turn and hit another rider and bounced into the car. And so I could have just locked up my brakes and put my face into the back windshield, but I thought, well, there has to be a way to not hit the car. And so I kind of low-sided myself and slid on the ground and ran into the underneath of the car instead of the big.
That's crazy.
And so there was a huge dent on the back of the car, and all I did was ask for a tool to straighten out my bars and fix my saddle, and then I finished the race.
On the road.
This is a mythical Cliff Bar story about how Pete ruined a car and was fine and just got back up. Because I think one of your teammates saw it, right?
We saw it at the gas station later that day, and they were going, look at the dent look at what you did to our car. And there was a very large dent in the back of the car.
You're a big boy. For people who are on who are just listening, can't see you, how much do you weigh and what's your height?
I weigh 200 pounds, and I'm about 6'1", and I'm wider. Right,
yeah,
I'm a wider than a normal cyclist.
Yep, you look like you should play football, not be a cyclist.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. Another thing you can do, and this is what I do. You watch our videos on YouTube.com/TrainerRoad. We do highlights of races, and Pete critiques all the bad things I do. But you can also watch just the complete race. And if it is, there's kind of two modes I feel like in a crit or road race. There's the one where you're all strung out and going fast, and that you got to keep wheels pretty tight. Then there's where the peloton is kind of fanned out a little bit, and you can still be going fast, but those are the situations I feel where crashes are most likely to happen. And you can leave a little bit of gap or kind of be on the outside and still get a great draft. And you'll see people call me out on YouTube you're not following close enough. But if you look at my watts, they're 150 watts, but I've got an extra half-length bike to brake.
Yeah, there's still a lot of draft going on.
Exactly, because you have the whole peloton in front of you. Yeah. So you don't have to be that close. You can give yourself an exit, or I'm running kind of on the outside or on the back, just so I can give myself exits. I don't like being in the middle of a peloton where I am almost touching the wheel in front of me, and then I've got two shoulders next to me and someone behind me, because then if a crash happens, you're instantly going down.
Nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Where they go.
So you can kind of do that. You're going to use a little more fitness though, because if it does string out, you might actually, if it does string out, you just let people file up in front of you. And then that's a great time. Then you're further back, which we're going to talk about in a second, where you can kind of slingshot when it slows down again, rather than trying to always fight to be the first few wheels. I think that's the biggest like misconception that
is you have to be right up front.
Everyone always says, you got to be right up front, you got to be right up front, you got to be right up front. But there's times in situations in certain crits where you don't want to be right up front. It takes more energy. It's more dangerous. It's more taxing. You get a free ride on the back. It's really, actually, Pete, let's ask that question.
Yeah.
When do you want to be at the front, and when is it okay not to be at the front?
For me, like you'll note, we do a lot of videos and we race a lot of crits together now. I'm either sort of off the front or I'm mid-pack, right? I don't actually hang out right at the front very often unless I'm specifically doing something. And like you said, if you're a foot or two off a wheel, I can get a way better view of what's happening in the race. And that's kind of the next step of this experience that you can get by crit racing is you can tell what's going to happen if you're paying attention in the race. Like we were laughing.
It's amazing.
We raced on Tuesday, and a local sprinter, a move was up the road, and Jose wants to win, right? Obviously. And so I'm behind Jose, and he reaches down and tightens his shoes, both of them, like click, click, and then front one, click, click, and then does the other shoe. I'm like, well, he's going to bridge, you can just watch it unfold then he gets in his drops and then 10 seconds later we get to the straight and then he lights up a sprint and you're like, of course you were going to do that, how could you not see that was going to happen? So things like that happen all the time and people start looking around and, it's just people forecast what they're going to do all the time. And so being mid-pack, you can see a bunch more of what's going on, and you're not. People can't punish you for making mistakes when you're in the middle of the pack. If you're on the front and you make a mistake, people can punish that. Yeah. So
the only time I think it helps on the front is if there is a attack, you don't cover it. You have to let the other people from behind fill in, and if that happens, you can have a much easier acceleration. I think
it's a bit of a gamble, but
yeah. In my experience, if it's technical course. Where it's going to be strung out almost the whole race, up front is imperative. But all these other ones where, you could line up 14 riders across the road, and it's not flat out fast the whole time, at least in the lower categories, you can totally move up a whole bunch more than that. The other kind of funny thing that happened in our race is we were doing like 1-2 attacks, and Pete loves to attack when it slows down. And we'll have this on video, but we were going, I had just attacked, and I turned to the guy who covered me, and I go, there goes Pete. And I didn't even know you were going, and you go on my right side in the gutter like a second later, and you just go, and the guy's like, I can't cover that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And then you actually start the question with, am I too nervous to be crit racing? This is simplistic and easier said than done, but relax. I mean, there's a reason throughout so many of the workouts with the on-screen instructions, I coach relaxation. And it's not just so you won't waste energy. It's also so that you can being relaxed in a situation like this buys you that fraction of a second that can actually make the difference between falling and not falling. So do your best to relax. And again, it's easier said than done, but there are techniques. Drop your shoulders, soften your elbows, take big breaths. Whatever works for you, if you can get just that little extra bit of relaxation, you will be a better, calmer rider.
That was his next question. Was it tricks or exercises to be calmer? So you just said them. So you say it in the workouts for TrainerRoad?
A lot, because your posture carries. I mean, if your shoulders are around your ears and your arms are locked out and you've got a death grip on the bars, as soon as anything happened that just unnerves you even slightly, you're probably going to grab those brakes, and probably harder than is necessary. So if you start from a relaxed place, it's less likely. I mean, maybe the reactions are slightly slower. It doesn't matter. You don't react as violently. Yeah. So actually, I always talk about dropping the shoulders. It really starts in the face. Right, your expression. Sure. If you're already wearing your pain, get rid of it. Relax your face. It carries down through the neck, and anything that's on your face is probably going to affect your entire posture all the way down your frame.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you can tell when I'm struggling in a race, my shoulders will be very close to my ears because I'm doing as much as I possibly can, and I always try to, wind myself back from that. yeah, it makes a huge difference in how you feel while you're racing and doing if you get caught in a situation.
And just look at the guys who handle these situations best. They have the most relaxed postures. They're draped on their bikes. They look like they're one with the bike. They're just out for a ride. They're not gutting themselves trying to hang on to something. And even when you are gutting yourself trying to hang on to something, you don't have to look that way.
Besides Froome.
Yeah, some people.
He's the exception.
Yeah, I mean their posture is what it is. But even someone like him could probably benefit from learning how to retract those shoulder blades.
In the CompuTrainer classes that we used to go to, we talked about earlier, used to always say, no earmuffs, guys, no earmuffs. Because people try to wear their shoulders as earmuffs.
Yeah.
And you would yell at us.
Yeah.
And then every time you'd be like, oh.
And it carries from there. And a lot of the times, I've said it before, any expression on the face, the only acceptable expression when you're suffering is a smile. If you're going to wear any expression at all, make it a smile, because you'd be surprised how that affects your mental state. But if you don't want an expression, just relax, go slack-jawed. Look at all the guys riding up, what they climbed today, Tourmalet, or not Tourmalet, but I can't remember the climbs.
Big mountain.
For today, big mountains. The best riders, I mean, they look like they're not doing anything.
Yeah, nothing.
This is actually, I notice I do this even in social situations. I mean, are you ever out there and you're like, whoa, I had just shrugged my
Do
shoulders
it in
for
the
a little
podcast.
bit.
I mean, as soon as I feel them coming, I was like, oh, dude, relax.
Yeah, relax. The other thing, you could try this, and placebos work too, but if I tell you that L-theanine relaxes you, you should just take it, because it's like, a couple cents, a pill. So that could be something too to kind of get the anxiety out of there. So try that. And then actually talk to your doctor, then try that. Disclaimer.
There we go.
Last question is, do you think it would be best to have rim brakes for crit racing? I hear rim brakes tend to block the wheels less than disc brakes. So kind of he's asking, well, what if I just couldn't brake as hard? Wouldn't that be better?
Chad and I had a pretty funny discussion about this when we read this question. We'll say I know a famous crit racer who used to loosen the brakes of his athletes he was coaching so that they would a full pull would be about 50% of your braking.
Terrifying.
And that's more back in the days of rim brakes, right? You can't really do that with disc brakes anymore. But the idea being you never need a full fistful of brakes in a crit race unless you're crashing. And so his philosophy was if you have more modulation in your brakes, you'll be able to scrub less speed. It's just like a race car. You want to brake the minimum you can to keep going fast through the corner. So if you're braking just enough to make it through the corner, that's exactly as much as you need to brake. And so, Chad, you said you've done drills with this too.
Yeah, well, my first collegiate coach did that very thing. He actually softened my brakes up. So, and it was absolutely unnerving, but it also showed me that I don't need to brake nearly as much as I'm braking. So it was an effective teaching method. A little scary, but it worked.
I feel like for me, it would be the opposite, where I'd go to what I would normally go to, feel like there's no braking, and then panic and do as much as I possibly could. It would just mess me up. And then on a regular road ride, I would probably flip over the bars because I would be used to the half braking.
Yeah. One of the tricks is use your brakes less in a crit. You don't need to brake as often as you think you do. A lot of the times, it's amazing watching even our local Tuesday night. It's impossible. You should not have to brake ever on that course.
There's no reason to brake on that
course.
There's
no reason. And you'll see guys touching the brakes in the straightaway. And so it's just instead of going around or standing up a little straighter, people hit brakes, and it's burning watts. You put that into your bike to make you go that fast. So you're just scrubbing off. You're making yourself have to pedal harder sometimes.
More work for you.
Yeah. So practice a little less brakes than you think you need. And with disc brakes, that means braking less often rather than less every time.
Is there ever a time to brake in a corner?
Well, it can be. So it depends
there's actually quite a lot of finesse braking that goes on in a tightly knit bunch. I mean, if you're close and you're trying to hold position, you've got to use the brakes. If you don't want to come off someone's wheel, you probably got to use the brakes, unless they're just drilling it and you're just hanging on for dear life.
Yeah. If you're in the middle of a corner, I think depends how much traction you have. The real problem with braking in the corner and why people crash is they overwhelm the traction of their tires. So if you already have used up if taking the corner at 30 miles an hour uses up 90% of your traction, you can add 10% more in braking force and you will slow down. But if you do 15% more braking force, you will slide out. So think of how fast you're going through the corner and how much of your tires you're actually using. And you can brake in the middle of a corner and it's okay. But if you're going as fast as you possibly can, you cannot brake. And that's why people like on scary descents, when they grab brakes and they just straighten it out and fly off the edge, you probably would have been safer not braking and really
just seeing if you hang on,
which
is a terrifying thing to do.
Yeah. And I think I just talked about this recently, but a recent epiphany that I've had is that feeling of the road pushing back. Because before, when I would get that feeling, I would hit the brakes a little bit because I'm like, ooh, this is the limit. But I'm not even close to the limit. I'm probably 20% to the limit. And that's what it was actually riding with the Masters 123, which is a much faster field, where they all just rail it. And I think I took it's so bad. You can see a video on it. The first corner, I had raced with the 3.4s and the 3s, and they took that line at a very different, corner at a very different line, at a very different speed. And I had done it like, I don't know, 4 races before that. And then I do it with the Masters, and they go way faster and a lot tighter, and I messed up the first line. But after that, just being in the group and having that road pushed back at you, and I braked way less on tighter turns because of the feeling, like it's okay to have that feeling. And I know from personal experience that it can be really scary. But it's
a tricky way to learn, because on the one hand, you've got someone in front of you and you're like, if they can do it, I can do it. But they are doing some things differently. So it's not just because they can make that line work for them, you can make that line work for them. If you do everything the way they do it, you can make that line work for you. But there is a learning process. So do recognize when there's a big gap between the people you're trying to hang on to and your abilities. And you know, shrink that gap over time, but it's probably not going to happen in a single race. It's probably going to happen over the course of a season.
One of the things, the limit of your tires usually makes noise. And so if you're hearing what sounds like Velcro ripping off, or like
singing.
Yeah, singing is what we say, but it has a very specific sound. So if you hear your tires making that noise, you really are on the limit. You probably are at 95 or 100%. That's when you know. And I so rarely hear that noise that means I'm far away from pushing my traction limit all the time.
And you're railing it. I feel like, Chad, a lot of racers, you're either limited by your skill and traction or your fear. And I feel like a lot of racers are limited by their fear much more than their traction.
Absolutely.
So and for me too, it's less of a technique thing. It's just that fear of feeling the pushback and taking the corner at 30 into an off camber. Ooh, that can be scary.
And that all ties back to the experience. I mean, that fear just dissipates the more you do it.
Yeah.
And the more you gradually push those boundaries. Don't try to do it all at once.
Yeah. Ready for the next question?
Let's do it.
This question is from Nate. He's a CEO of a local trainer company. I want to talk to both of you guys. We haven't talked about this before, about Cat 2 to Cat 1 upgrade strategy in the U.S.
Okay.
Because Pete, you're Cat 1.
Yeah.
Chad, you got points for Cat 1, but for some reason didn't upgrade at the time. But you're kind of in the same situation I am now. Here's the problem. After Cat 3, you need 30 points to upgrade from 2 to 1, and you get those points by placing in races.
35 for 2 to 1, right?
Oh yeah, 35. Sorry, 35, even more. You can only get 10 of those points from Masters racing or from like local series racing. So if you have like a Tuesday night crit, you can't get all the points there. You have to go to bigger races. The problem is P1-2 is such a step up from Cat 3, Cat 3, 4, Cat 5. I feel like, in my experience, 5, 4, and 3 are actually pretty close, and there's like the same kind of riders and all of that. Yeah. Then you get to P1-2, and it's amazingly fast.
Huge jump.
Also, you're a Masters racer. Is it like when you're 47, Chad? 47, like racing with 23-year-olds, it's much harder. 2, you run into specialists. So like right now on a Cat 3 race, I can sort of sprint with the sprinters. I can sort of climb with the climbers. And I'm good at flat time trial stuff.
Yeah.
But in Cat 1, P1-2, I can not climb with the climbers, and I can not sprint with the sprinters. So what's the strategy, especially if you're like a Masters racer, to get those points to go from 2 to 1?
Yeah.
I had one particular strategy in the day, and it wasn't even intentional. It just worked out because of our race calendar with the team I was on, and that was to do stage races. Stage races award big points. They give you stage points, and they give you overall points, and those overall points are huge. So if you can get in the top 8 in a stage race, and if you can do well in a couple stages, you'll get your upgrade pretty quickly.
Isn't that just as hard though? Because you have the P1 too, or the P1 people in there.
It's plenty hard. Yeah. I'm just saying there's a lot of points on offer.
And more options.
and consistency in a stage race. From my point of view, it's just like the tour. There's 20 guys really trying for the stage race, or if there's only 50 guys, there's 10 guys really trying.
Yep.
So you really only have to beat a handful of guys to get points in a stage race. Yeah. And it's all about consistency and not losing any time. All right, you don't have to win any races. You just have to always make it and never you're a pretty good time trialist, so you're not going to hemorrhage a bunch of time in a time trial. So you really can get in that 5th through 10th. And there's points there all the time, right?
Yeah.
All the time.
Power rider can make that happen. And the beauty of it is if you have a good time trial, if you have a good a big engine, if you can, you whittle down your frame and you're a good climber. I mean, relatively.
Or good enough.
Good enough, yeah.
So you don't lose too much time. What do you do if you're not a good time trialist?
Man,
Pick another sport.
Brandon
Or
here,
be a real good
he
sprinter.
picks time races with uphill time trials.
Yeah, uphill finishes, right?
Uphill finishes, yeah.
Yeah, so I think he's a sharper rider than he gives himself credit for.
I think so too.
Punchier. He should pick 5 to 10 minute finishes, but those are hard. That's even harder to find than just an uphill finish. A lot of the stage races he does finish on a 20-minute climb
climbs.
Or have an uphill time trial. He could easily. I mean, that's how he does it, right?
He's a good time trialist too.
He's a good time trialist.
So he just got his Cat 1 upgrade by doing stage races. So I hear what you're saying too. Is another strategy is really be specific about doing courses that you're good at.
It also really helps. When I got mine, I get to laugh now because back in the olden days, you had to do your Cat 2-to-1 in less than 365 days.
Same
That's
rules
insane.
applied. That's why I missed my 1 upgrade. That wasn't why. I got it in my head that racing Cat 2 would be good experience for me, and I didn't want to jump right into the P1 twos. So I thought I'll just omit the P1 aspect of it and just race 2s for a while. Proved to be a huge waste of time, actually. 2s don't race like teams.
Yeah.
That was the big issue.
So the way I lucked out is I trained really hard and had a super good run of fitness for about 2 months. And since I was just hitting everything, I just raced every weekend, right? I went and did...
Ride the wave.
I rode the wave, and I did every P1-2 race. I think I raced twice a weekend for 8 weeks in a row, and I got lots of top 5s and won a couple races, but I struck while the iron was hot and had a really good... Your confidence also rolls with you. So, as soon as I started doing well and I felt fast, it's so easy to go to a race and be like, I'm going to smash it.
Yeah.
And I think also I was on a team where to do anything worthwhile, you have to be a 1. And so there was some pressure, and it just was, you go into a race with the philosophy is I'm here to earn points like you do. And it changes the way you race the race, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually sometimes don't even finish if it's, I'm not going to get points because there's the danger of the final sprint. And I'm I want to race again tomorrow or the next weekend.
Yeah, you're clear on what you're after.
Yeah.
And if it's points, then why subject yourself to that danger? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. What about, there's Cat 2 only stage races, right? So cherry picking those?
That's exactly what I was just talking about. So when I did the whole Cat 2 approach, it was because, I didn't feel ready to jump in with the pros and the 1s. But the problem there is unless you have teammates, and even if you do, it's very self-motivated, or everyone's...
Everyone wants to win as a Cat 2.
Everybody wants to win. There's not really anyone out there who's willing to work for a teammate. It's like everyone's a 2 and they want their 1 and they want to win as a 2. And there's just not the team cohesion that you get with P1-2 racing.
Are you saying that's a good thing or a bad thing?
Bad thing. In terms of collecting points, you're basically 1 man against 90 instead of you and your support crew, and then maybe some riders who aren't really there to win, their support also.
At Cat 2 races especially, it feels like everybody wants to upgrade, so everybody is fighting you for points. And it's not like in a P1-2, some guys don't care about points at all.
No,
right?
Yeah, exactly. They're
just there for the team.
They have their roles. Yeah.
So that brings me to my next point is about picking races based on field size. So USAC upgrade points are a little wacky in my opinion. If you have a race with 11 riders, it's a road race. First place gets 7. The next kind of bucket is from 21 to 49. So if you have 49 riders and you get first place, you get 8 points. If you have 11 riders and you get first place, you get 7 points. Like, and then that goes down to sixth place. If you have 11 riders, sixth place gets 1 point. So if you can find those road races that are 11, 15 guys,
this is another pitch for stage races, because for whatever reason, at least back when I raced, so we're talking 10 years ago, stage races were big draws. I think people knew they were going to get 3 or 4 races in as many days, or even 3 days, 4 races. So they were willing to travel, and there were big fields. I mean, when I did really well at Cascade and got a bunch of points for it, it was because the field, I think, was 110 guys.
Whoa.
Yeah. So when you win a TT in a 110 guy race, that's pretty motivating.
That's motivating, but you get no points for
Hugely
TTs.
motivating.
For the overall.
Not the TTs, but the race started with the TTs. So I got the jersey, then I protected the jersey, and then I finished with a small margin. But either way, I got high finishes in all 4 stages and a high finish overall. And that got me
so you maxed your points for the weekend,
a lot
right?
of points.
The max points is, I think, 20. For
At the
2 to 1.
time, actually, no, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, I think racing. I think finding races that aren't necessarily suited to you, but where you can have a strategy that would work. Like you could succeed if you. So many road races now where you make the early break, and as long as you shed some of those guys, and then if someone catches you, like. It's you between 5 guys. You're guaranteed points if you make the early break. Yeah. And so all you do is fight for the early break no matter what. And guys fall apart during road races. And if there's only 15 people, no one's going to chase. I mean, it's not easy, but it's a good plan of attack.
It's a good strategy
for points.
So I want to summarize this for everyone who wants to upgrade it. And this probably carries over to cyclocross and mountain bike. Is 1, get Masters points where you can, because in my experience, Masters has been safer and relatively slower than with the young people.
Not back in my day. I'm telling you. No, they're...
Okay. They're maybe nicer. I don't know. Not less yelling. 2, do pick courses that are to your benefit. That's kind of, everyone knows that. 3, do stage races, because there's not only you get a lot of races in a weekend, but you get the overall positioning, and you get a whole bunch of points on that. And then kind of, if you can pick those races where it's only your category and not the upper categories. So I'd rather, of course, race a 4 race than a 3-4 race, and I'd rather race a 2 race, especially a stage race, than a P1-2. And that just, I think, where the inflection point is biggest is with the P1-2, because you're racing against teams, and that can just be demoralizing versus a just 2 race.
And you're kind of lucky. Your fitness level was adequate for P1-2 racing, or is adequate for P1-2 racing. A lot of people do their first P1-2 race and just get smashed. And so it takes a year to understand what you need to do for the following year. Yeah. So don't get really demoralized from that first year of any upgrade, right? Even 3s are noticeably quicker. Like you said, the tactics and stuff is more the same. But if almost any category, when you upgrade and it's a shock to the system, that happens to everybody. Just learn from it, get a little faster, and go for it the next year or later in the season.
Yeah, Chad, it is getting hot in here. No, my thermostat is not set on. Jonathan usually does that.
We message somebody to turn the heat down.
If anyone's listening at TrainerRoad, please turn down the heat in my office so this room gets less. And 2, I have the fitness for a crit, but not a road race. A road race, I would get destroyed in the P1-2.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's hopefully those are some tips about how to upgrade easier. Okay, Chris. Chris has talking about overreaching. What does overreaching feel like to each of you? What signs do you look for that it's time for some rest? It's a great question.
Yep. So before we talk about how each of us deal with it, it's been a while since we talked about overreaching, functional and non-functional forms, and then, of course, overtraining syndrome. So I was going to approach it from a slightly different angle and just talk about how we balance stress with recovery. And it's basically 3 scenarios. We either get positive adaptation, negative adaptation, or no adaptation. And positive is, I put it in quotes because you think positive adaptation is when I balance stress with recovery, when in fact it's when you eventually restore, when you eventually recover and you restore balance. So we're typically in what would appear to be a negative adaptation sort of approach or scenario where stress far outweighs recovery, because we're inflicting a stimuli that tells our system we need greater resources, and recovery is absolutely part of the picture, but we don't really level out until we finish typically a recovery block, that 4th week at the end of a 3-week loading cycle. sort of thing. So I kind of want people to get over the fact that we're not always trying to keep stress and recovery in perfect balance. Over the course of a week, stress is higher, 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 and that recovery does not meet, does not balance out. Ideally, by the end of the week, it comes closer to balance so that we can start another week effectively, do it again, run it down a little farther, bring it back up closer to balance. And then finally, we hit that recovery week where we do try to balance things out so that we emerge from that recovery week actually fitter, ready to tackle greater challenges.
The way I always love to think about it is you're revving an engine. So you want to rev it higher and higher and higher, and then let it go back down. And every time you rest, it goes back down further. So you're actually traveling further in the stress continuum over and over and over.
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay. So with that in mind, I just want to briefly discuss just to give riders and athletes an idea of what to look for when they think, is this the functional form of overreaching? Is this what I should be feeling? Or is this non-functional? Am I starting to head into those murkier waters where if I keep on pushing, maybe it could become really bad and eventually push me to overtraining syndrome, which carries really hefty consequences. So first off, understand the term acute fatigue. This is what we do with every workout is we heap on a bunch of fatigue really quickly, and we're tired because of it. That's pretty much always okay. We have to do that. That's a necessary aspect of it. But in terms of achieving proper overload, we have to progress things at the rate in line with our rate of recovery. And that's where it gets really tricky. Because some athletes recover really well, really quickly, just in general. Some athletes recover well after high intensity, whereas other athletes don't. Some athletes can deal with a ton of volume and recover well, whereas other athletes, it takes distinctly longer. So you have to kind of get a sense for, I'm not like that. I'm not like every other rider, but the signs of overreaching too far are similar across riders, regardless. So when it comes to functional overreaching, which is what we're after, knocking ourselves down to a point where with a bit of rest, we rally and we can handle more work. You might see a decrement in performance over the course of a loading phase, whether it's a week heading into a recovery day or 3 weeks heading into a recovery week. Performance might gradually tick downward, but after resting for, be it a day at the end of a week or a full week at the end of a loading cycle, you rebound and performance starts to tick. It basically returns to baseline or higher.
So this happens a lot in the week where like the workouts later on in a block are much harder than the workouts earlier. Yeah. And that could actually be a good thing because you're putting yourself in this state.
Absolutely. That's what you're looking for. But recognizing when that good thing starts to sour is the art, is the trick of it all. So what you can watch for in terms of functional overreaching, the kind we're after, the desirable, the positive adaptation, is your mood is pretty steady. You don't get to that point where you're flying off the handle or where you're verging on a bit of depression or anxiety is high, that sort of thing. So mood stable, your immunity and health. You're not getting ill. Yeah. You're not pushing yourself to the point of succumbing to an upper respiratory tract infection or something. And your sleep doesn't deal with disturbances. I mean, as soon as you push into those, the more undesirable, non-functional overreaching, sleep's one of the first things to suffer. It's a little harder to get to sleep. There's more waking episodes. You don't wake up in the morning feeling refreshed.
For sure.
Yeah. Does that happen to you, Pete?
Oh yeah. I think that's easily the first barometer or first litmus test that I use is if I can't fall asleep as quickly as I normally do. Usually it's like, fast enough that I'm not worried.
Yep. And this in and of itself, you don't have to panic. Right? Oh, I just had a bad night's sleep. I think I'm pushing into non-functional overtraining. You don't even have to put a term on it. You think I need to back things off. I'm pushing too hard. Not necessarily. This is when you start watching for repeat occurrences. One night's bad sleep, 2 nights bad sleep, not a big deal. But when it's starting to happen 3, 4, 5 nights in a row, then you know something's up. It's time to dial it back.
You might get excited about that one night. You're like, oh, I'm there.
Yeah, I'm here.
Adaption's coming. Do you guys ever get night sweats when you run like really hard workouts?
Yeah, for sure.
Especially if I do a criterium at night.
Yeah, but we call them like race legs or crit legs. But if you race late and your legs are sweating and you wake up multiple times in the middle of the night with your legs either like they feel like they're firing or they're sweaty or your body's sweaty. That's
after our big events like 6-hour lost and found, that night I'll wake up just covered in sweat, totally tired or totally cold.
Emmerich got her first taste of this having done Donner Triathlon. Her sleep was wrecked. She was hot all night. She finally understand why I sleep under a sheet if I sleep under anything at all after I've done hard workouts or a string of hard workouts, because you're just revved. It's and sleep is impacted, hopefully in the very short term though. So in the case of functional overreaching, with a bit of recovery, and we're talking days to maybe a week, you should be back on track. And if you're not, and this is going to be the outcome of all of these scenarios, you need to adjust. So psychologically, physiologically, there is a rebound. So you undergo functional overreaching. At the end of it, you rest, you come back, you're ready to do it again, legitimately ready, and you recognize it on a number of levels. If, however, you keep on pushing past that point of functional overreaching into non-functional territory, this is where you start to deal with the sleep disturbances we just talked about, where your mood does start to tank. And that can manifest in a lot of ways. I mean, higher anxiety, maybe you're just not as sharp in terms of cognition. Maybe you start to deal with just a bit of depression. We're not talking on a clinical level here, but for some reason you're just down and you can't understand why you can't get back up. You're more susceptible to colds and flus. And interestingly, I just read an article I'm in the midst of a book, really good one, where they draw the line between URTIs and what's called URS. So an upper respiratory tract infection is super common in endurance athletes, right? It happens all the time. But the symptoms for it, upper respiratory symptoms, can actually be present without there being an infection. And those symptoms can have the same impact on performance. So you can have poor workouts without actually having an infection. You can simply be exhibiting these symptoms, not actually be sick, and your performance can tank because of it. And then, of course, you keep on pushing, and you can, contract the virus or bacteria or whatever it is that's trying to challenge your system.
That's crazy.
That is very crazy.
How I think of it is when you're in a block, your Tuesday, let's say Monday's rest day. Tuesday's good and hard. Then we get to Thursday and Saturday and Sunday. I can still complete them, but the RP goes way up for the same wattage.
Yes,
100%.
That's exactly, and that's one of the points. Right. So RP, okay, we'll get to that.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. No, that's fine. Jump in whenever.
Okay, I'll do it now. Just kidding. Sorry.
So more, not to interrupt you. More non-functional symptoms is fatigue. So a general form of fatigue. So obviously the workouts feel a bit fatigued, but you're also fatigued during rest, and it doesn't really wane. You're just you're tired all the time. General weakness and performance starts to decline. And again, fine line here, right? I mean, you can see a gradual performance decline when you're functionally overreaching. You can also see that same decline when you're non-functionally overreaching, but there's a rebound when it's functional, not so much when it's non-functional.
Maybe on that, it's the time of you're in that state to be able to
it's all contextual. You have to recognize where you are in whatever cycle, whatever phase of training, whatever point in that phase.
Could work stress and stuff change the amount you could be in that state?
Absolutely. So I used to talk, it doesn't matter what I used to say. Now I see things in terms of training stress and life stress. And life stress is the catch-all for everything that doesn't happen during the 2 hours of the day you train. So it's the other 22 hours, as this actual book puts it, as a lot of clinicians and sports scientists put it. Yeah. What happens over the course of the other 22 hours makes a huge impact of what you can do over the course of the 2 hours you're training and how you can respond to that training.
I personally think that is so overlooked, especially by the people who are, we call them the persona data scientists, who they look at their TSS and saying, on paper, it makes complete sense that I should be able to do these intervals. Yep. Therefore, I challenge the training system, or my power meter's wrong, or my trainer's wrong, when really
they just keep on pushing.
They had a bad day at work, they had a fight with their spouse, and something else happened, and all of this stuff makes it so much harder to do the workouts.
You have to be adaptive. You have to be flexible. You have to be willing to change things up when you recognize something's going wrong. The challenge is, when do you recognize it's actually going wrong? It's not just a bad day, but you're having consistent bad days, or you're seeing the manifestation of a lot of these symptoms to the point where this is more than I usually deal with. I need to start. Maybe my recovery patch needs to happen now, whether it's days or a week.
Yeah.
So with non-functional overreaching, you reach your recovery week, but at the end of the week, you don't emerge fresh and ready to go at it. Although most people will force themselves to anyway, even though they don't feel recovered, they don't feel up to the task. It's on the training plan. It's on my schedule. My coach is expecting it.
Yeah, it's Monday.
I'm going to do it. Yeah, it doesn't matter. So in this state, energy never really comes back. If you have muscle aches and soreness, it persists. It hasn't dissipated. It's not gone. And RPE stays elevated. Everything's harder. If you're starting a new block after a recovery week and everything's harder, that right there is a red flag. That should tell you I'm not up to the task. Those first couple workouts, assuming you get past the initial getting back into it, should feel pretty good. Should be pretty encouraging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
So these are the signs that I feel like. One is when I am functionally overreaching, or actually this first one is when I think I should back it off. Is when I can't concentrate at work. And all you guys should do that too. But you get that where you kind of just stare at the screen and you have like a simple email to write, but it takes forever. That's like a key sign for me that I need to.
I've worked with a lot of people over the years who are bike racers who I don't know why they come to work on Monday. They're basically useless. They just had a big race weekend or a big training weekend, and I see them just staring at their computer screen.
They're like, I did 6 hours yesterday, and you're like, I can tell.
No kidding.
The second one is, this is a little bit more about functional overreaching, is I feel like my allergies get way worse. Like I get inflamed. It just happened this morning. I did three semi-good days in a row. But I breathe in and I want to sneeze.
You're in the midst of an insult to the system, so your immune system is at maybe not red alert, but it's
turned on, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm inflamed from all this stuff, and
inflammation's part and parcel with training stress. So.
Exactly. So those are the kind of the things that I watch for. And if it affects my mood or I can't concentrate, definitely time to take an easy day.
Yeah, and often enough, that easy day goes so far. If it's just like when you recognize, I think I might be getting a cold, and you find a way to tone your stress down for a day. I just take a day off, and I got to say, I haven't been like sick nearly as often as in years past, because I'll see the signs and just take it easy, just in terms of stress and avoiding the stress. It doesn't take hold, and I'm back to work the next day rather than 3 or 4 days later or a week later.
And the big thing is on those rest days to be mentally okay with taking the rest day, because a
That's
lot of y'all
really good point.
are type A people, and you can't take the rest day without stressing out about it. So on the forum, someone just talked about it, about how they have to do things. They don't want to take days off. But I feel like it adds more mental stress, and then you don't actually get the rest that you need.
No, because type A's are typically like in sympathetic overdrive. We don't know how to, even if we don't recognize it, our sympathetic system is elevated. It's always elevated because we're processing, we're thinking, we're worrying, we're stressing. Even if it's a tolerable level, only because we've become accustomed to it, it's not good training. It doesn't allow you to recover.
One of my biggest takeaways is when I was training a whole lot is on rest days, focus on the recovery as your challenge or your workout for the day.
It's training.
It's training.
It's absolutely training.
So if you would have spent 2 hours like riding, if you had a 2-hour workout or a 3-hour workout, I would be like, well, I'm going to do 2 hours or 3 hours of stretching, foam rolling, like some core strength, a little
watching movies.
Sitting on the couch,
yeah, but it would be you work just as hard at your recovery as you do at your training, and that's a huge thing that makes if you drop in a day every week or however often you need to do it, if you do it right, man, it's worth tons and tons of overall in your training.
Absolutely, and it lends to a greater level of consistency and high quality consistency too. It's not you're not just getting the workouts done, but you're getting them done well.
Yep.
George Hincapie is famous for this. In some books, and Lance would say that he just, as soon as they get back from a ride, he's like laying on the couch, feet up, and maybe asleep, and asking everyone to bring him stuff. He doesn't want to get up because he knows
at that level.
Well, if you want to perform well, maybe not get everyone to bring you stuff, but instead of, I think someone said, on the days off, I want to go through all my mechanical stuff. I want to like tweak my bike and check everything.
It's still very stressful.
Exactly, yeah, and all the things you could do if you just, comedians in cars getting coffee, new season's out, just watch all that, lay on the couch.
Binge on the season of something.
Yep, it's great.
Okay, so non-functional overreaching, you're in it, you recognize the signs, or maybe you've chosen to ignore them, and you keep on pushing. Eventually, you can push yourself to the point of actually achieving overtraining syndrome. So a number of symptoms, number of aspects of it that are all harmful. Basically, fatigue has become a constant part of your life. So it's not just I feel run down, and you give yourself a couple of days off and it rebounds. You can give yourself a couple of weeks off and you're not going to rebound. It is now part of life, and it's a long, hard road back. Performance obviously tanks. It's just going down, 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 swirling the drain. Greater incidence of illness because your immune system is just in a constantly compromised state. You can actually see muscle loss along with fat gain, so double whammy there. And then you got biological disruptions ranging from affecting sleep, appetite, menstruation in women, neurological imbalances also affecting sleep, but your mood, your libido, your ability to concentrate, And then hormonal dysregulation, everything from testosterone to cortisol, the ratio between the two, adrenocorticotropic hormone, which has to do with, I should have made a note. It's a major impact on, I can't remember, I'll have to look it up. Epinephrine, norepinephrine, but either way, you're hormonally out of whack and it's not going to restabilize anytime soon. So at this point, if you've actually managed to push yourself this far, and we've talked in the past how you actually have to be a pretty high level athlete to go this far down the rat hole. If you've actually reached this, the road back is at best months, very probably many months, to the point of, I don't know about multiple years, but
you throw away the rest of your season for sure.
Oh, season's gone.
8
It
months.
might be the next season too.
10 months.
Yeah.
12 months.
Yeah, and then the road back is a slow, careful one. It's a drag. I've seen it described, and you have to be so delicate with everything you do, making sure you're keeping it on track and you're not pushing yourself back into that state because you're downright fragile.
Have you heard of this happening to people you know?
Yeah, and one of the best stories I have is, I won't say any names, but this guy who was always pretty good, but he trained a ton and rode all the time. And he crashed and broke his arm or something, but a real crash. And he took 2 months off and couldn't, it was and he came back and he was absolutely flying, right? Like it took,
gotcha.
right? He just needed that 2 months of nothing he was way faster after 2 months of not riding than he had been in the previous year or two that I'd known him.
And that might not even be overtraining syndrome. That could just have been non-functional overreaching that he needed recovery from.
Yeah. But even the non-functional side of things, where you haven't pushed yourself all the way to actual overtraining syndrome, which is really hard to diagnose, by the way, it can be a long way back. It might not be, I just need an extra week of recovery this time or a couple extra days. It could be a few weeks, a couple months to get you back on track.
With the real chronic or the actual syndrome, everybody who more or less gets that in bicycle racing never comes back.
It's
over,
yeah.
right?
They either miss their window, or it breaks them psychologically, or
they never
physically
come back.
They just can't get back.
Yeah. So you just don't see them anymore, and it's usually like the under 25-year-olds who are they're capable and they're driven and they have the time and the energy and they do it, and then after a couple of years they just sort of float off. And
it happens often.
Triathletes too. These are people doing I'm sure it could happen with less hours, but what I've seen
in general,
20 to 30 hours a week for a long time with intensity.
Yeah, the volume is key. Or if you have overall stress, right?
Yeah.
If you have a super stressful job and you're doing 10 to 15 hour weeks,
Sleeping 5 hours a night.
oh man. And one of the things that I picked up, or that was extremely helpful for me, is as your weeks or your blocks go, prioritize rest more as as your volume increases and your intensity increases, prioritize rest more often.
Recovery in general. So not just the rest side of things, but also the nutrition side of things.
Everything, right? You want to build yourself up to be capable of withstanding this really tough training.
You're building a better human. It takes materials, it takes focus on or attention to all of these symptoms. So to sum it up, regardless of where you are in this continuum, hopefully you're more to the left than the right. When you start to recognize persistent symptoms, that's when you start to take note. A day or two here and there, no big deal. But when it starts to happen recurrently, that's when you start to worry. So if performance is slipping, fatigue's ratcheting up, doesn't seem to be coming down, you can't normalize it after a day or a week of rest, sleep quality is suffering, your mood, and that includes motivation, a bit of depression, your overall stress level. Illness is on the rise. You're a little more susceptible to bugs, or you've got symptoms even. That's absolutely worth taking note of. And then general muscle soreness that doesn't dissipate. And I always think about the times where you talked about how your legs were always sore.
They still
because
are.
I think you
always sore. I'm serious.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't remember last time they were not, before Leadville, they were not sore.
Yeah. So if I were your coach, I would absolutely be concerned about that.
Yeah. And it's much easier. Err on the side of caution with this. If you're considering that you might be closing in on the spectrum, man, just back it off.
Why not be cautious?
Why not be cautious?
Sure, and that's
Because we want to be faster.
No, I get
and
yeah,
we
yeah,
want
I get the
volume.
dilemma.
Yeah, it's. I understand. It's not the right. It's not
hard
the way
to digest.
Yes,
Yep. But it doesn't have to be an about face. You don't have to just stop training or just take a couple days off. You can dial your training intensity down a little bit, shorten the duration of the workouts. So you can just tweak a workout or a couple of workouts maybe not even missing the point of it. Maybe a 5-interval workout becomes a 4-interval workout. Maybe a 2-hour weekend ride or a 3-hour weekend ride gets trimmed in half. I mean, it doesn't have to be total neglect of your training. And then nutrition, especially in terms of vegetable and protein intake, because so many endurance athletes get so caught up in carbohydrates, and it's usually refined to some extent that vegetables and all the micronutrients and the fiber and the water that come with them, that goes away. And then protein gets neglected too. And protein is so vital in the recovery process. And then finally, consider recovery as it relates to you. Be super subjective about this, because recovery rates and recovery rates relative to different forms of stress are different. I mean, different for different riders. They're incomparable. I mean, you might meet someone that you have certain parallels with, but I promise you those parallels end at some point. No rider is just like any other rider.
Yeah, don't look at a pro and be like, that's me.
Don't even look at your buddy.
Yeah, don't even. A good example is if I did back-to-back Baxters, I would be torched. And Nate can do them twice a day forever, pretty much. But if I do 1 hour of on-off 500-watt 30-second ones, I can pretty much do those forever.
Same here. Yeah. So, I'm with you.
Okay.
And we both feel fine afterwards, right? You do a Baxter and you're like,
Baxter's fine. Yeah, I've done a lot. And I think, too, I don't want to let go of the volume. What I try to do is optimize the recovery. And I think there's still, in my life, big gains to be had with recovery, and probably all of our lives. Of trying to reduce stress, better nutrition. I think that's huge. Nutrition
it always
tied to...
blows my mind that people don't prioritize nutrition.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
But then better sleep.
well, yeah. And the harder you're trying at training, the harder you should try at nutrition and recovery and rest. All of those things should ramp accordingly.
Yeah.
Don't sacrifice any of those other things for
they
more
move
training.
lockstep.
Now let's do two more, then get into the questions. Terry asks, I currently ride an endurance bike, a Giant Contend SL2 disc, and would like to upgrade to an aero bike, Scott Foil 10 disc. All the research I do ever says that I should ride an endurance bike. What can I do to see if I am flexible, strong enough to ride an aero bike? And then he goes on, he really wants to get the aero bike. So, gentlemen, the first thing that jumps out at this is all the research says he has to ride an endurance bike. I'm guessing he's an older gentleman. He doesn't say his age. But what I've seen is endurance bikes kind of marketed towards older people, and that's because it might hurt to be in that position. But what do you guys think? Do you need to be a certain flexibility or strength? Do you need to be able to test something before you can ride an aero bike or a more aggressive bike?
I mean, even an aero bike can be set up to allow a person to effectively ride like an endurance bike. I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's the...
Yeah, the best part is if your bike fits you, or if almost any bike can be made to fit you. You're gonna have to go way off the rails
That's
to get
a way to put it. Yep.
to get a bike
a
road bike that doesn't fit you, or doesn't accommodate your strength and flexibility.
Yeah.
So I would imagine aero-road bikes almost all aero-road bikes can be fit to you.
Yeah, so Terry says he can touch his hands on the floor flat by bending over. I've never seen, people always talk about flexibility. I've never experienced this, and I'm a pretty inflexible person, about not being able to bend over in a TT bike or road bike because of flexibility. Usually it's in that position I feel pain from being too low and discomfort, or my hip angle's off so much that I can't put out power. Have you guys experienced flexibility isures?
Yeah, I don't know that flexibility, I mean, maybe it has a bit of an impact on aerodynamics because you want this super low position, but that super low position probably doesn't hinge on your flexibility so much as the fact that you can't put out power in such a constricted position.
Yeah.
I always think of, this is kind of a blanket statement, but the people who are ultra flexible aren't necessarily as strong. And so it's the combination of the flexibility and the strength which allows you to ride in aggressive positions. The putting your hands flat on the floor is a good indicator that you probably are flexible, but it matters a lot more about being able to hold yourself on the drops and depending your posture while you're actually riding.
I just see someone as being someone who's extremely flexible, who can contort his or her body into a really aggressive aerodynamic position, isn't going to be able to make power. I don't think flexibility is the limitation. I think the hip angle, the body position, where you have to hold and keep your head in place and keep your head.
Yeah. So
those are the concerns.
Terry, what I would do is, you can look at the stack and reach of both bikes. You need to figure out where your hands would be on your hoods, and then you can figure out, okay, how many spacers do I need and what size stem do I need on this bike in order to work? And if you go to Slow Twitch, they have tools and actually like a library of bikes to help you do this and to do the math about what degree stem is going to be how far out. But in general, unless you're going to be on that endurance bike and have a whole bunch of spacers, so you're like really, really high, and people who do this usually have bad backs and stuff like that, but you don't sound like that. You can totally make an aero bike fit like a endurance bike if you're not in the extremes, as Pete said. So there's nothing wrong with having spacers. I got a bunch of spacers.
Yeah, Nate's bike is very tall.
Yeah, because I have a XL and then it still needs to be tall in order for it to work. So it's right. Yeah. We see no issue with it. The one thing that TT bikes is different, because with TT bikes you can get in positions where you can't, or the bikes are so different and people's positions are so different. You can get in situations where no matter what aero bar you choose, you can't get the right fit. You either can't get low enough or you can't get high enough. You can't get close enough, you can't get far enough out. Yeah. That is a lot more about, you really have to look for a bike that fits you. Where with road bikes, they just don't seem that much different.
Slow Twitch is another good resource on that matter too, right? Telling you which TT bikes are the right bike for your body.
It is amazing on TT bikes. They won't tell you about the right ones for your body, but if you know your position, you can put stuff in and they'll help you build all your, what bars should I use and all that sort of thing, and what kind of sizes you could be against. Which brings me to the final question. This is more an observation that I made that I think will help people maybe save a lot of money. Okay. So just recently we've talked about TT bikes a ton here, and my position on the TT bike, I like probably a lot of people here. I think people fall in two camps. Either they can put out the same amount of power on the road bike, or they put out drastically less. It's never like
TT bike.
On a TT bike. It's never like 5 watts difference. It's usually pretty big. And for me, it's about 21 watts difference between TT bike and road bike. I was recently doing what?
Nothing. I was making fun of your about 21 watts.
Yeah, did he say 21? You said that?
Yeah.
Approximately.
I did, power meters plus or minus 1.5%, so who knows? But I did
about 20 watts.
I did the ramp test back to back, and that was the difference. My TT position, also, we have the UCI constraints if you're racing road, and that can also do things, right, that are bad. So I just rode my TT bike outside preparing for Santa Rosa. With my setup, with how it is extremely flexy. You saw it, right?
Yeah, we were playing with it. It would scare me.
It did scare me. Yeah. So you start hitting bumps and like inches of flex as you're going down 30. And Santa Rosa, the 70.3, which I was going to do the bike. Yeah, very rough.
Yeah.
I was so scared, and it bent so much. I was afraid of like carbon braking that I called my wife and she picked me up in the middle of my ride. So that being said, I'm thinking about doing a whole season of all the TTs on my road bike with aero bars.
Clip-ons.
Yep, clip-ons. And I want to get tested in the wind tunnel or some of these at-home devices.
That's interesting.
Because here's a few things that make me think that we could kind of even this out. And you could save a whole bunch of money if you could do this. We know that, in general, a TT bike, the frame saves very little in terms of like aerodynamics to like an aero road bike. You know what I mean? Like 5 watts or something. And I think the Venge too they said is as aero as the Shiv for the road position.
Yeah, I'm sure it's close, right?
Yeah.
We're talking small,
exactly.
single digits.
It's the position that really matters.
Correct.
And on the TT bike, what you do is you get, at least for me, this is like the new way to do it, is you get rotated forward. And when you rotate forward, your saddle goes up because you're going to be more above that bottom bracket. So to have the same position from bottom bracket to your saddle, as you move the saddle forward, the saddle has to go up. And what that does is you have two choices. Your pads, you can either raise your pads, and that increases your frontal area, or if you lower your pads, you get a much tighter hip angle. And with me, that's what I've always struggled with. You get the tight hip angle, you can't put out power. Plus, I can't, I've got being a tall guy, you have other issues that people don't have where you can't reach anywhere and you got to jumble up. Yeah. So what I wonder is, on the road bike with a laid back position, so more like, think of you're racing a crit and you're in the drops. That's kind of your position, but your arms in the middle. One thing we know, Chad, is that there's an adaptation period there too, like riding the drops.
Sure.
I feel like I put out not as much power as I do climbing, but I think I'm more likely to adapt to that. So what I'd like to do is go in the wind tunnel and figure out with this position, I have a lower frontal area too because my saddle's lower and my bars can be lower with pretty much the same hip angle. If the loss that I'm getting from the aero-road bike and the drop bars can be less than the 21 watts.
I'm on your side. I think it's going to be less.
Yeah, right?
I think you'll be able to ride faster on your road bike.
It's a much subtler change.
And I wonder how many people who struggle with this are in the same boat. And there are the people that put out the same power and then TT bike all day long.
Yeah.
But if you can get a lower frontal area on your road bike and put out more power, there's got to be, you got to have like big problems with your, with your aerodynamics in other parts of your bike to order to make up the difference there.
I keep thinking of the guys who have like a 8-year-old TT frame that they ride like 3 times before they're given TT.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say which one's faster, but I know which one I would rather ride. I would way rather ride my road bike with clip-ons and not have to worry and not deal.
Yeah.
It's comfy. I'm always so sore after I ride a TT bike. Like if it's a stage race or the next day, you can tell you thrashed yourself on your TT bike. And I don't know.
It's a different story if you're a triathlete and you don't have any UCI rules and you can, like, it's the only bike you're riding and you're going to adapt.
Sure.
And you have to run afterwards. So maybe the less watts is not such a big deal because you're using less energy and you got to run afterwards. But for people doing 3 stage races a year, TT bikes are expensive.
Yeah. And on top of it, any sort of course that has a level of technicality and you're on your road bike instead of a TT bike.
Or
climbing.
climbs. Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
yeah, climbing. Jeez.
Yeah. I save 4 pounds on my road bike versus the TT bike.
Oh, I didn't consider the weight.
Yeah. That's only going to be, usually in TTs, that really doesn't make a big difference. But if it's an uphill TT or there's...
On some courses it does, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The technical aspect could be interesting. So...
there's the 3-day women's stage race is coming up.
I know, but we have Lee McCormick coming the same time. Ooh. So we're going to have like 6 hours of mountain bike training and then do a race and then do it again and then do a race and then do it again and then do a race.
Sounds wonderful.
Could be tough. So I wanted to let people know for Santa Rosa, I was going to do it on my road bike with clip-on aero bars. I got the Venge aero bars, but the way my hydraulic hoses are, they're a little bit too short. And when I clamp them on, my brakes don't work, which is important. So I'm told. Unless you're racing a crit.
Yeah, unless you're racing a crit, then you don't need them.
But so basically, unless I rerun all of my hoses like today, when I'm supposed to go there, I can't do it. And I don't want to do it on my road bike. But at the same time, an hour away is the San Rafael crit, which is a USA crit, which is big time. There's barriers, though, as you guys were talking about, like exit points.
Cover that. It's going to be on TV.
Yeah, we can watch you.
Will my race be on TV?
Yes.
Yeah, the whole day.
Oh,
we can watch you.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Everyone just shake their head in shame. Anyways, I'm going to be there at Santa Rosa. I'm going to, my sister's racing it and check in. I think even my relay partner, we're going to check in and he's going to do the swim and then we'll just DNF. And I'm going to go down to San Rafael, do the 35 plus 3-4 race, go back to Santa Rosa, pick my sister up and come back. So please say hi. Super fun if you do. And I'll see you there. You guys ready for some questions?
Let's do it.
Okay. Bike Culture Theory asks, not sure if you guys are taking questions on here, but I have a question about crit racing strategies. I did my first official fast corner crit 2 weeks ago. Bike Culture Theory, really, I'm plugging our own stuff. Well, of course, I'm plugging our stuff, but youtube.com/TrainerRoad, there is a race analysis series. Watch those videos. Pete is critiquing all the things that I'm doing. A couple things well, a lot of things poorly. I've learned so much, and I think a lot of people have learned a lot too. So anything we could mention here would just be not as great a detail because you can see it happening in the race. Watch those.
He said, should I keep going solo or get in the group behind? It depends. If you think it was really fitness based that got you dropped, then I think doing a solo TT probably gets you greater overall fitness gains for your time in the race. If you feel like it was the cornering that was the problem, wait for the group behind you, practice your cornering, do whatever's holding you back in the race. Get more time at that. Yeah.
Cool. Murr Fisher asks he says, question, midsole cleat replacement for a triathlon. So I don't know if he's asking how to do it or just what do we think of it. And the idea here is because you are so far forward and above the bottom bracket, by pushing your cleat back, you kind of get that more of the same relationship you have in the road bike. I had patella tendon problems for a long time, and I did this when I first started racing, and it really helped.
Yeah, that's pretty extreme, though. Isn't that where you center the cleat under the shoe? Like, actually requires drilling. You don't use the.
I've never drilled it. Some people do drill it. It's like really scary for me because I feel like I'd pull it out.
Because I've always had my cleats backed up to the fullest extent.
Yeah,
Me too. Yep.
yeah.
And I have an aggressive road position, and I have my cleats as far back as they will go.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So it's basically, we think it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless you're talking about the extreme end of things, and I don't have a whole lot of information on that. So
Don't drill holes in your shoes. Like that scares me.
Get
Doesn't sound
custom made
like a good
shoes
idea.
if you want to really get something crazy going.
Yeah. Michael says Light Pro is who is doing that now. So the midsole
okay.
cleat replacement. Looking for more questions. We got dead air. I think
No.
Jonathan usually talks to
Yeah, I
these
think he
things.
does. How can he talk and read at the same time?
I don't know.
Jonathan's so impressive.
He's
you know?
amazing.
Here you go. What's up, guys? When are you going to release the sprinting video?
Yeah, we've good. We got the guy doing it right here in the room. Tucker, how long till the sprinting video's out? Just you say something quick. 2 weeks? He's saying 2 weeks.
Cool.
Okay, we'll see. And he didn't even say anything; just shook his head. Yes.
We put that in his mouth. Here, Jesse Motor says, how often can I do 30-30s and what would a good 30-30 workout look like?
Good question.
Chad, what's your favorite 30-30 workout?
Is it Clouds Rest? Are those 30-30s?
Those might be 1 minute. Man, that's a really...
You can go in the workout
think it
creator, or
is.
you can go in the workout list and just type 30-30, and they'll all come out.
But Clouds Rest, if it is 30-30s, is definitely one of my faves.
My favorite is Spanish Needle.
Yeah, so Clouds Rest, and I just the other day did, I think, +3 or +4, but you can nudge them up. The +3 is 75 minutes worth of those bad boys, and it's a long workout, but they're 30-30s, and I think those are absolutely one of the best ways to increase aerobic capacity without burning yourself out.
Especially during this time of year, like I feel like there's no way I can mentally ramp up and do a threshold workout or do anything like that. But I can jump into some 30-30s
and that's the beauty of these is you can do a lot of them. I mean, I say you, and that's a bit of a generalization. Some people don't respond as well as people like Pete and I do. However, these don't exact nearly the toll. I think 4x12. So over the course of that, you got 6 minutes at VO2 max. Try to do a 6 minute VO2 max repeat at, in this case, 130%. It's not going to happen. But you can amass the same amount of time, the same amount of muscular stress, a really high level of oxygen uptake, all the things you want out of a workout that has you doing effectively over the course of that. That's 24 minutes of time at VO2 max, which is a huge workout. But it does it in such a way that you actually, in a lot of cases, can do it tomorrow and do it the next day. I've stacked 3 of these end to end and come out of that week into the next week on an upswing.
Wow. David has a question. I made the break with 4 unattached riders in yesterday's 4-5 crit, but I was on the largest team, 5 racers in a 30-man field. I decided to do little work and skip pulls. Letting the break fall back put more of us in reach of the podium. We ended up sweeping it. I finished second. But was this a bad strategy? Thanks for TR pushing my FTP from 190 to 300 this year. So that's a great improvement, David. But basically what he's saying is if you're in the breakaway and you got a bunch of teammates that have a good chance, can you sabotage that breakaway?
For sure. And I think it's less up to you. It's more up to the 4 individual riders in the break. Like, get rid of that guy, right? Like he's going to only do one thing, and that's wait for his teammates and not help.
They can't be surprised if you're a disruptor.
Yeah, and David,
they can't hold it against you either.
When you say, was this a bad strategy? Like, the results are the best way to show if it's a good strategy or not. If you swept the podium, that's a great strategy, right? Like, I think this sort of stuff doesn't happen enough where people could be in the breakaway and you want to win and there's a bunch of sprinters with you who like locally there's Jose and Scott Waters, great sprinters. I'm not going to ever outsprint them. I wouldn't want to be in a breakaway with them just rolling to the line. That's my worst chance.
Yep.
It's much better for me to wait and either have them try to kick me off, which is hard to do. It's hard to do to kick someone off a breakaway that's sitting on, right?
Yep. I really, it's all about making him cover moves, but if you don't care about going back to the field, then they don't care at all, right? It's all up to the 4 guys to drop the guy and then out race the team of 5, and so it sounds to me like you were doing it right.
Okay, still looking for some more questions.
Jonathan's gonna be so sad. He's gonna be like, guys, what were you doing? How about man?
Someone says, what's the best strategy for 30-30s or similar on a non-erg trainer? I think it's really easy on a non-erg trainer because what you do is you just drop in, you drop chain rings. So big to little. And it's almost always like a perfect easy to hard. If you're 1-by, you just got, I've done that too. Usually.
It's probably down 3 gears.
Yeah. So with SRAM, you just dump them. You go, grrr, and I go to a really easy gear. And then as a couple seconds before the interval, I go click, 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 which happens, you need to do that a lot in races. Do multiple clicks at once. So it's kind of good training to do that. Okay, what do you guys think? We done?
I guess we did it.
Oh, Jonathan, please come back. Good luck at Nationals. Thanks, everyone. If you want to find out more about TrainerRoad, go to TrainerRoad.com. Remember that pricing update. So if you want to lock in, please sign in this week or sign up this week. And also, please like this video, subscribe, and comment. It really helps us grow the channel. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.